Welcome to the Feral Friends podcast, where we talk all things fitness, wellness, and PCOS. And yeah, sometimes we get a little feral. I've got a really good one for you guys today. The ultimate guide to the PCOS, PMOS name change. What's changing, why it matters, and what it really means for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Feral Friends podcast, where we talk health, hormones, healing, and the messy middle of becoming your best self. I'm Erica, and I'm here to have the hard conversations to help you move forward in your health journey. And I hope you've steeped yourself a nice hot cup of tea, because this is going to be a doozy of an episode. This is the ultimate guide to the PCOS name change. And this has been really big news in recent history, and I believe it is paving the way for some really awesome things ahead. In this episode, I have a lot to cover. This is going to be a longer episode, so buckle down. We are getting into it. So since PCOS has been rebranded into PMOS, I've done a lot of research to make sure I cover all of my bases in this episode. So be sure to like, share, comment, and follow along for more information like this, more content like this. On my channel, we talk all things fitness, wellness, and PCOS. This is going to be your savable episode. I promise you guys, I'm going to really get into it. I am going to go over the history of PCOS, what this new name change implies, the breakdown of this new name, the entire movement behind the name change, some very important stats, why the old name was so harmful, and I'm going to bring in a little lived experience to support that. We're also going to discuss some possible shifts moving forward because of this name change, as well as what things are not changing, the long-term risks of PCOS or PMOS, the bigger picture, and realistic expectations. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So on May 12th, 2026, a major change happened in women's health, and that is the name change of PCOS or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome into PMOS, which is Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome. Still working on that name. This is a massive shift in how we understand PMOS as we know it. There's some really big reasons why this name change needed to happen, largely because PCOS is medically outdated and harshly invalidating to the women who have it. It is a misleading name. As researcher Helena Teed put it, she said it is emotionally invalidating. And if you have PCOS or PMOS, I'm sure you can agree. And the reason being is not everybody with PMOS has ovarian cysts. PMOS is not an ovarian issue at the core, but rather it is an endocrine and metabolic disorder. And now the name reflects that. And that's really honestly the biggest takeaway from all of this, is now the name actually reflects what it really is and what those of us who have it have been saying all along. And I'm so thrilled that this change finally happened, and I'm very optimistic for the future because of this name change. So like I said, this condition is not just ovarian, and not everybody has cysts who have PCOS. And for more information on how PCOS is diagnosed, I have a whole podcast episode detailing that, where I break down the Rotterdam criteria. And if you're still uncertain as to the parameters and the criteria that doctors use to diagnose it, I would highly encourage you to check out that episode and share it out. And it brings a lot of clarity to this condition. Up until May 12th, 2026, doctors largely did not focus on the metabolic and endocrine component of PCOS or PMOS. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably throughout this episode because it's still a learning curve to change to the new name. So just keep that in mind. PMOS affects hormones, metabolism, insulin sensitivity, cardiovascular health, mental health, skin and hair, inflammation. And the old name PCOS didn't touch on that at all. In fact, if you had just heard the word PCOS, you would just think ovaries. It's a reproductive issue. So the name change is putting the attention on the core problem of this syndrome, which is endocrine and metabolic. The old name was confusing and reductionist, and it centered on ovaries and fertility and ignored the woman as a whole person, and only really took them seriously if they wanted to have children, which honestly is kind of a slap in the face to women everywhere, especially those who don't want to reproduce. And it ignored our quality of life, metabolic health, and long-term disease risk. So we were due for a name change, long overdue. So now let's break down the new name. Polyendocrine. Poly meaning many, endocrine meaning hormones. So it implies already that there are many hormones involved. And that includes insulin, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, leptin, ghrelin. It's a lot. The second word, metabolic. It implies insulin resistance, blood sugar dysregulation, energy issues, and fat storage, which are all issues with PMOS. And then we're back to the word ovarian, which is still relevant, but it's not the root cause of the problem. It's a side effect. This name finally reflects that this is a full body endocrine and metabolic disorder. And not only that, but it makes it easier to recognize the full body impact of this syndrome rather than just isolating one organ. So let's talk a little bit about the history of PMOS. So in 1935, it was first described as Stein-Leventhal syndrome, and it was thought purely to be an ovarian disease. And we really didn't do much with that research until the 1980s and 1990s. It became more recognized, but a lot of that research was limited and outdated and often based on male physiology models, because up to then, and even into current day, researchers aren't researching much on women's bodies because they're too complex and there's too much room for error. It throws off their results. But that's why you research on women. That's why it's so important. Of course, we're going to throw off your research because we have so many different hormones and our cycles are so different than a man's. In 1993, though, women were finally required to be included in U.S. clinical research. That means since 1993, we have been working off of incomplete, outdated science. Endocrinologists, OBGYNs have been working off of research from the 80s and 90s. And it is 2026. We are so long overdue for an update. Now, the good news is women have been working so hard for decades to change this name so that it validated their lived experience and reflected the actual issue. Over 14 years of global work led by Monash University and the National Health and Medical Research Council, it involved over 50 organizations, 22,000 patients and clinicians, and 86% of those people supported changing the name, and the vast majority of those people also supported the word endocrine being in the new name. A formal proposal was made around 2023. 3 years later, now we have the new name, and they were originally looking at changing the name by the end of 2026. So I must admit that I'm pleasantly surprised that the name change happened pretty much mid-2026, being May. Kudos to them for moving along on that. Now let's go over some important stats about PCOS because these really matter and they provide us a context about PCOS or PMOS. PMOS is estimated to affect approximately 1 in 8 women globally. Let me put that into perspective for you. I would bet a lot of money that you know somebody with PMOS, but maybe they don't even realize they have it. That's how far-reaching PMOS is, guys. I am still curious as to the body of research regarding how PMOS is caused. Is it caused by our food? Is it caused by our lifestyle? Is it caused by trauma? Is it a combination of all three? One of those factors turns on the gene. There's still so much more research needed because it also manifests itself so differently from individual to individual. Another reason why it goes undiagnosed for so many women. What PMOS might look like for one person looks completely different for another person. In my case, I did not have the PCOS beard. I did not have chest hair, but I had hair thinning going on and I had really bad, and I still struggle with, flares of cystic acne, which are also valid excess androgen symptoms. So because I didn't have the beard, my endocrinologist said, you don't have it. And because I was managing it so well, because I was so afraid of gaining weight, I was incredibly restrictive to the point where it was unhealthy. Okay, I was managing it so well that my endocrinologist completely disregarded me. He's like, you're not overweight enough. Well, bruh, because I am not eating anything. And nobody works harder than a PCOS girly, but that's a whole other conversation. What I'm getting at here, guys, is it's such a widespread issue. Changing this name, hopefully, paves the way for more funding and more research to get to the bottom of what the hell is going on here. Is this a nature issue? Is this a nurture issue? Is it in our genes and it's turned on by our environment? What is going on? Another important stat to note is approximately 170 million women are affected globally by PCOS. Approximately 70% of women with PMOS are undiagnosed. I kind of noticed that in my day-to-day life. Like, I'm not diagnosing people officially, I'm not a doctor, but I can look at somebody and take a pretty good guess and be like, I think they have PMOS, because I look at the symptoms that they have. I look and I see, they have cystic acne, or they have facial hair, or they have PCOS belly, they have insulin resistance markers. Like, I can see that in other people because I experienced it myself, and I've researched PMOS so much, like so much, that I can identify it in somebody else before even they identify it. I'm not saying I walk around telling people they have it or anything like that. It's more of a mental thing, but so many women are undiagnosed with it. My mission is to, 1, remove the stigma around PMOS, and 2, increase awareness around it. Because my whole life, I had no idea. It wasn't even on my radar. And I'm so glad that it's becoming more well known so that women know what they're dealing with, because that's the first step to treating it. Even if it means treating it yourself, like a lot of us have had to do. Another important stat to know is people of color are 69% more likely to be undiagnosed and be dismissed. And that needs to change. Up to 80% of women with PMOS have some degree of insulin resistance, and about 10% ultimately develop type 2 diabetes. So yeah, this is an endocrine and metabolic issue, and that needs to be the discussion moving forward. Side note, I am drinking a milk thistle tea for liver support, and I put a couple threads of saffron in it. Saffron is being more researched to help with anxiety and depression. And anxiety and depression are very prevalent in women with PMOS. So this is supporting my body and my brain. And of course, I added some honey for taste because this would probably not taste very good without honey. So the old name, PCOS, caused a lot more harm than we realize. That's because names shape medicine, whether we like it or not. Doctors often dismissed patients without ovarian cysts or without other traditional symptoms that they learned in their textbooks back in 1993. They focused only on fertility. They treated symptoms in isolation. And here's how the typical approach to treating PCOS went. Are you ready for this? Oh, you have period issues? Take some birth control or metformin. Oh, you have acne? Here's some spironolactone. You have hair loss? Rogaine. You have facial hair? Electrolysis. Trouble with your fertility? Try metformin. Doctors never treated the root of the problem. And even more infuriating, probably the most infuriating of all, if you have PMOS, you know the struggle of this. How many of you with PCOS have been told, just lose weight? Ugh. If I hear that again, I might punch somebody. Now we're labeling and recognizing you can't just lose weight. And this is what makes me so mad, because the condition itself prevents you from losing weight. They tell us to just lose weight when PCOS is the reason we can't, and then treat us like failures and blame us. And then there have been doctors, I've seen this in threads, I've seen this in Reddits, I've seen this in TikTok comments, I've seen this from women's lived experience, that there's doctors would say, well, you could just not eat at all, or somehow imply that they just should starve themselves. That is ludicrous. A doctor should lose their license for suggesting that somebody should starve themselves to lose weight. I heard a comment and somebody's doctor saying, well, back in the Holocaust, there weren't anybody with PCOS. They were able to lose weight. How insensitive to say that to somebody, regardless of whether or not they have PCOS. Like, it makes my blood pressure rise. It infuriates me to no end. Gym bros. The gym bros that are like, oh, it's all thermodynamics. It's all calories in, calories out. It's all a math equation. Until you have lived in the body of somebody with a hormonal issue, a hormonal disease, you can kindly fuck off. Please and thank you. I am done with the medical gaslighting, and I am done with the victim blaming. We are putting an end to this. One day at a time. And it's been a fight, ladies. It's been a fight. And we have made it this far. We have worked so hard for over 14 years to get to this name change. And this is only the beginning. This is a huge catalyst for change. But the fight's not over. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep advocating for ourselves to get more funding, more research, more recognition, more validation. I have heard scenarios of, and I am one of these, okay, women who have been under medical supervision, weighing everything they ate. Yes, oils, sauces, butters, fats, everything, dressings, weighing every damn thing they ate, exercising, eating at a deficit, and still not losing weight. I heard of a woman who was even in a laboratory setting, watched day and night, and she had severe PCOS. She was on an 800-calorie diet, exercising. This was monitored by doctors, wasn't losing weight. Don't you dare for a second tell me it's all calories in, calories out. Don't you dare. That's the conversation we need to have. That's the research that needs to be done, because these gym bros and fitness influencers, they have no clue, and they need to learn. They need to learn or sit their asses down and shut up. Zip it. Who agrees? Who's with me on that? I get fiery over that. That's why I'm only slightly feral. So the condition makes weight loss physiologically harder due to insulin resistance and hormone dysfunction. Women have been always told to just manage their symptoms, go on a pill, and come back when they want to get pregnant. I've been told that myself. He completely ignored me. He even asked me, what's your relationship status? Why does that matter? Is that going to change my quality of care? I actually asked him that. I said, how is that question relevant to my care? He shut up after that. He didn't ask the question again. And I was recording the whole conversation because I was ready to report that mother. Don't be afraid to give it back to your doctors. Don't be afraid. In the end, they serve you. If they deny you tests, if they deny you care, you need to state that they need to include it in your chart that they denied you the testing that you requested. Say, I would like it noted in my chart that I was denied the testing that I requested for this syndrome. And make sure you get a physical copy of that. We need to be our own advocates, ladies. Don't be afraid. Speak up for yourself. You owe yourself that. The current state of women's health is dismissive and dehumanizing. We are seen as incubators. We are seen as less than. We are seen as little men because all of the research that they do it on men and then just lower the dose for women when we have entirely different hormonal profiles. That needs to come to an end. And we're working hard. We're fighting the good fight, but it's going to take time. Now I'm going to share a little bit more about my lived reality, a little story time, if you will. I've told you a little bit so far, but I'm sure a lot of us can relate with my story. And I want you to know you're not alone. You are 100% not alone. Many women, including myself, tracked everything, restricted heavily. There were times where I was starving, not eating. I would curl up in a ball every night with hunger pangs. I was fasting 3 times a week for 36 hours at a time and barely seeing the scale move. That was the only thing that finally got it to move, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't have been that way. Why do I need to go to such drastic measures? Nobody should have to do that to themselves. Overtraining. And while that works on a non-PCOS body, it doesn't work for us. Or it only works to an extent, and then it backfires. It causes cortisol to rise even higher and then cause a more vicious cycle. Because the moment I stopped fasting, the moment I stopped starving myself, the scale just bounced right back and it came back with a vengeance. It's not sustainable. We do all of this work and we don't see results. We are spinning our tires in the mud. We are driving the car with the brakes slammed to the metal. Well, it seems like other people are just walking in the sunshine. It doesn't just seem that way. That's how it is. The moment we get the medical support that we need, it's like the brakes are taken off. Instead of treading water, we're finally swimming. In my case, it took getting on a GLP-1, specifically one with a GIP, since those are more effective for PCOS. I had to do my own research, read the countless women's testimonies as to how that helped them, and pay out of pocket and treat myself. It was expensive, but my quality of life is so much better. I've just had to make sacrifices financially to make it happen. But I shouldn't have to do that. Nobody should have to do that. Nobody should have to sacrifice groceries or their quality of life to afford a medication. That goes for any medication. And the moment I went on it, I was like, this is how easy it's been. This is how easy it is for other people. I can eat at a moderate deficit and eat 3 meals a day and not starve myself and be at a healthy weight that I feel comfortable at and not feel bloated and inflamed like I'm fighting my body all the time. It's this easy. It's like somebody who can't hear finally putting hearing aids in. It's like somebody who can't see putting contacts in. It's like somebody with one leg getting a prosthetic. It's not different. It's a medical assistive device. It's no different. I, like many other women, have had to self-diagnose, self-educate, and self-treat. Luckily, my OB acknowledged what I was going through and diagnosed me, but my endocrinologist completely ignored me. And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes I've heard stories where the OB ignores the woman who is coming to them with symptoms, and the endocrinologist is helpful. It's not about the specialist. It's about the doctor themselves. Get more opinions. Find a doctor who's going to listen to you. They're out there, I promise. But sometimes we have to put in the work and search, and I know it sucks, but we do. It's not fair that we have PCOS, but it's our responsibility to manage it. Because PCOS presents itself so differently from woman to woman, the treatment looks different for everybody. There is a laundry list of supplements for PMOS, but what works well for one person might not help another person or may backfire for another person. The most popular supplements are myo-inositol, berberine, spearmint, and then you have magnesium, vitamin D, and fish oil. And again, I could list 50 supplements. I'm not even kidding. There are so many. The management itself is so intricate and so multifaceted. And that's what I'm hoping comes out of this name change, is the more research so we can figure out how do we tackle it at the root. I'm a firm believer that trauma is a big part of it. Epigenetics has a big part of it. Generational trauma. I think there's something to be said about that, because there are so many women with PMOS who have a history of childhood trauma. I'm going to be touching more on that in the future. But I did a survey on Reddit in a PCOS group, and I asked women, how many of you have had childhood trauma? And about 70% said yes. And I would even venture to say that that number might even be higher. That's a minimum. There is so much we don't know, and this name change could pave the way for more research to get to the bottom. Now, we do know that there are 4 subtypes of PMOS, and sometimes there is some overlap, but I believe there's an adrenal subtype, a birth control subtype, insulin subtype, and I think an androgen subtype. I think I actually got them all. I have like 2 or 3 of them. That is a step in the right direction, starting to kind of categorize these more efficiently. So now let's talk about what PMOS shifts in the world of medicine. So instead of symptom management, we're now moving toward root cause treatment. We're looking at things like insulin and glucose patterns, HOMA-IR, androgens like testosterone and DHEAS, sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG for short, cortisol, thyroid, LH and FSH balance, prolactin, AMH, inflammation markers, and so much more. One big test that I would highly encourage you to take is called a Dutch test. And I took that last year under guidance of my nutritionist. And it is a very comprehensive panel of not just your hormones, but how they all interact and where they are at different points in the day. It is an extremely informative test. Like all things that are actually useful in women's health, it's probably not covered by insurance. You probably will have to pay out of pocket like I did, but they do take HSA and I think FSA if you have it. We also need to start looking at gut health. That's a huge part of PMOS that's under-researched. Chronic stress, sleep. In my case, my PMOS symptoms are worsened by stress, and I notice that. Every time I have a cystic acne flare-up, it's because I am under a lot of stress. Previously, before I had self-medicated with a GLP, every time I would get stressed, I would notice I would gain more weight. I would be more inflamed. I would be more puffy. I would be more fatigued. So I definitely have more of the adrenal subtype of PCOS with a little smattering of the other kinds as well, but I lean toward the stress subtype. So I would encourage you also to look at those subtypes and ask yourself which of these best represents me, and it could be more than one. And that will help you better nail down what types of supplements are going to help you and what types of treatment plans are going to be most helpful to you. So with this name change, we're now looking at more preventative medicine rather than just reactive like we have in the past. And we're getting closer to treating the root cause of the condition instead of just chasing the symptoms. PMOS is linked to many long-term health effects. And that's another big reason this name change is so important, because now we're recognizing the long-term effects if it goes untreated and will hopefully cause doctors to take it more seriously. So left untreated, PCOS can develop to type 2 diabetes, like it did with my mother. It can develop into cardiovascular disease, fatty liver disease, endometrial cancer, anxiety and depression. Women with PMOS have 3 times higher rate of anxiety and depression. Eating disorders, body dysmorphia, vitamin D deficiencies. Those are just a few of the long-term risks and other detrimental health effects from PMOS. And now that we have a label to it and we're taking it more seriously, hopefully we can mitigate those risks in the future by treating PMOS. Treatment of this condition is preventing other conditions. It's long-term disease prevention. And I will toast to that. Just to be clear, let's talk about what's not changing with the name change. All the symptoms remain the same. The diagnostic criteria, like the Rotterdam criteria, remains the same, at least for now. Foundational management still matters. So we're talking blood sugar balance, strength training, walking, high protein nutrition, sleep, stress regulation. All of those are just as important as they were before. But the bigger picture is that this name change validates patient experiences. It reduces the stigma around the syndrome, improves clarity, pushes earlier diagnosis, encourages better research, and shifts the focus from fertility only to a full body health and quality of life. This is really going to help to demystify the condition and explain it rather than confusing people. The most important thing is it helps women feel seen, heard, and taken seriously for the first time. So let's go over some realistic expectations. This isn't going to fix everything overnight. This isn't a magic bullet. Implementation is going to take time, and they're rolling this out in stages. Some experts still debate the name, although I will say most people agree with it and most people are thrilled about it. The name change is not a cure, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I will close with this. PMOS was never just an ovarian condition. The name just didn't reflect the reality. PMOS, or Polyendocrine Metabolic Ovarian Syndrome, does. Hopefully, this is the beginning of being taken seriously, better care, earlier diagnosis, and treatment that actually addresses the root cause. This name is more holistic, more validating, more accurate, and hopefully this is just the beginning in how women's health is understood and treated. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could like it and share it out to all your friends and family, because in order to reduce the stigma and raise awareness, we need to be sharing this message to our loved ones, and we need them to understand what it really is, and we need to raise awareness together. Please share this episode out. I hope it was profoundly helpful to you. My name is Erica. You can find me as Only Slightly Feral on Threads, TikTok, and Instagram, and I am the Feral Friends Podcast on YouTube and Spotify. And I would love to hear your comments below. What are your thoughts on the name change? What are your hopes for the future? What are your PMOS experiences? Anything surrounding this topic? I would love to hear your story and see us talking as a Feral Friends community and helping each other feel less alone, more validated, and maybe even educate somebody with your lived experiences so that they can get the help that they need. In future episodes, we'll be touching on the trauma and the link of trauma and PCOS, as well as the mental health effects of PMOS, because that is a discussion that we don't talk about enough. But until then, I love you so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.